Hi everyone. On behalf of Intelletics Group Tuitions, I welcome you all to this session wherein I'm going to try taking up the LS of kidney, which definitely is a very, very important part nowadays included in 11th standard syllabus, and wherein many students find it difficult to draw it and understand it. So this is just going to help all those students who really want to know how to start with drawing up the diagram and what exactly are the tricks to draw the same diagram. So let us start with this. I'm talking about kidney. The study of kidney definitely is nephrology. It is called as nephrology. Nephron, as you know, is a structural and functional unit of the kidney. So study of kidneys is called as nephrology. Okay. Now, in this, we have to talk about, like you all know, where are the kidneys exactly located? And if you want to know about the LS of the kidney, we need to draw it first. You also might have heard about the layers that cover the kidney. There are three layers that cover the kidney, right? So LS of kidney, when we draw, I shall start drawing it. Now, let's start. Now, this is how we're going to start drawing up the kidney. First, what you have to ensure is you have to draw a perfect C-shaped structure in order to draw the LS of the kidney, that is longitudinal section of the kidney. Now, but obvious, I shall do the labeling later on. First, let's complete the structure of the same. Now, follow this line and draw the structures like this. Quite easier to draw. Okay, now after this, what we are supposed to draw is this. Let me try using different colors here. Now you might be wondering what exactly I'm drawing. So I shall definitely let you know when I start with the explanation of the same. So आपको दिख रहा है perfectly, and I expect some, questions if you have, any kinds of doubts if you have. Yeah. Now I just want to make it a bit more colorful. This is how you have to draw. The lengthwise section of the kidney, whenever we talk about, you should be knowing that each kidney is covered by 3 layers, right? So those are the 3 protective layers of the kidney you're supposed to remember. So this is how you're going to draw it. And ensure that you, whenever you're representing it in your exams, use up a blunt pencil for drawing these dots. For a reason, I shall let you know. Well, I know it's quite a boring job to do. Still, it should look good. Now, let me make this up a bit darker. So right now, what I'm drawing is something which entirely is going to protect the kidney. Okay, that's the reason I'm making it a bit darker here. As you know, kidneys are said to be retroperitoneal, and they're present in the lower abdominal cavity, one on either side of our spine. Yeah. So here it is. Thank you so much. So now what I would just start labeling out the kidney here, right? This is the outermost covering of the kidney. I shall call it as the renal capsule. Obviously protective in function. Now what do you see inside? The entire area inside the kidney, we can divide it into two regions. This is the outer region and that can be called as the renal cortex. इसे आप कहेंगे रीनल कॉर्टेक्स. अब जब आप लेबलिंग करते हो तो सिर्फ कॉर्टेक्स नहीं लिखना. इट्स ऑलवेज बेटर टू राइट इट अप्रोप्रिएटली एज रीनल कॉर्टेक्स बिकॉज यू मैन हैव हर्ड ऑफ दिस वर्ड कॉर्टेक्स इन मेनी मोर अदर पार्ट्स लाइक टीएस ऑफ ओवरी आप पढ़ते हो, तभी भी आप पढ़ते हो कॉर्टेक्स एंड मेड्यूला. So in order to avoid this confusions and to be more precise, let us label it as renal cortex. Okay, and the inner area inner to this will be called as the renal medulla. Now before we go ahead more inside the what you can say the details of the renal cortex and the renal medulla, let's even understand what are these structures indicating. Now this, let me say, is the renal artery, the one which supplies pure blood to the kidneys. Now friends, remember, pure means oxygenated blood. It has got nothing to do with the presence or absence of nitrogenous waste products in it. So pure यानी oxygenated blood, यानी जिसमें oxygen है, वो वाला blood is pure blood. Okay, kidneys do the job of filtration of the blood. So, but obvious, they are going to separate out the metabolic waste, the nitrogenous waste products that might be present or rather that are present in this blood, which is going to be supplied towards the kidney via the renal artery. Now, जितना ज़रूरी होता है कि like pure blood हर एक organ तक पहुंचना, उतना ही ज़रूरी होता है impure blood हर एक organ से बाहर भी जाना. And this is going to be done by the renal vein. Okay, this is done by the renal vein. Now what do you see here? Again, I will use up a color here. What you see here right now, what I'm drawing is the ureter. This is what is the ureter. Now you might be knowing the ureters are those which flow the urine out of the kidney. Okay, now what are kidneys made up of? Each kidney is made up of around 1 to 1.5 millions of specialized units called as the nephrons. In other words, we can say that the nephrons are the structural and the functional units of the kidneys. Okay, अब ये जो individual nephron होता है, ठीक है, अब मैं एक ग्रॉसली एक रफ स्ट्रक्चर आपको नेफ्रॉन का बताऊंगी, सो दैट यू विल गेट टू नो व्हाट एग्जैक्टली आई एम गोइंग टू टॉक अहेड. ओके, ये नेफ्रॉन जो होता है, ये I shall draw it somewhere here. Yeah. सो एक रफ स्ट्रक्चर मैंने बनाया है, अपने ये लोअर क्लासेस में पढ़ा भी होगा, इसका भी मैं वीडियो एक आध बार करा के दे दूंगी. ओके, सो दिस इज द नेफ्रॉन, हाउ इट लुक्स लाइक. ओके, अब ये जो नेफ्रॉन्स है, ये नेफ्रॉन्स होते किधर है? तो ऑब्वियसली किडनी में होते हैं. और आपने पढ़ा होगा, आपने सुना होगा, नेफ्रॉन के अंदर क्या है? तो ब्लड वेसल्स है. सो साइड में मैंने एक रफ डायग्राम बना दिया है नेफ्रॉन का. ओके, सो ये होता है नेफ्रॉन. एंड नेफ्रॉन्स आर द स्ट्रक्चरल एंड द फंक्शनल units of the kidney. I think now you can see the structure better. Okay, so this is the nephron, how it looks like. Now ये जो nephrons है, जैसे मैंने पहले ही कहा कि each kidney is made up of 1 to 1.5 millions of nephrons. These nephrons are obviously present inside the kidney. Now the nephrons do contain the blood vessels. You might have heard of the blood vessel, the network of the blood capillaries present inside this cup-shaped structure, which is called as a Bowman's capsule, and this entire structure called as a Malpighian body. This is called as the glomerulus. So it's a network of blood vessels. अब आप सोच रहे होंगे कि इसका और एलएस ऑफ किडनी का क्या लेना देना. सो फॉर दिस रीजन आई एम टॉकिंग अबाउट the LS of the kidney back again. Okay, अब ये जो आप किडनी देख रहे हो यहाँ पर, we can see that the renal cortex, the one which we had done the dotting in this way, I think you can see it again. I'm pointing it out here. Okay, so ये जो renal cortex होता है, this renal cortex, it appears to be dark red in color and it looks granular. I shall write here the renal cortex is dark red and granular. That is the outer part of the kidney is called as renal cortex and it is dark red and granular. अब आप सोच रहे होंगे कि डार्क रेड, हाँ तो उसमें क्या बड़ी बात है, डार्क रेड है तो क्या है. तो that is what I was trying to tell you. This is the reason why I gave you a reference of the nephron. Of course, this doesn't complete the structure of nephron. ये just एक what you can say एक idea है nephron को जानने के लिए. अब अंदर वाला जो layer है, this one, which I have labeled it as renal medulla. This renal medulla is the one which appears slightly, what you can say, not that dark, light colored. Okay, so it is no doubt red, but it is not really blood red, or rather it appears to be slightly a shade lighter as compared to the renal cortex, and this is more of striated. It has a striated appearance. Now what is meant by striated appearance? I've drawn something you can see. This is what is said to be striated, that is striped appearance. Now let us understand why exactly there is a difference in the appearance of the renal cortex and the renal medulla. So kidney के अंदर क्या है? तो nephrons है. कितने हैं? तो each kidney is made up of around 1 to 1.5 millions of nephrons. Now what I will do is I shall draw one small nephron inside the kidney so that you will get to know why exactly there is a difference between this renal cortex and renal medulla. So here it is. Now, this is how a single nephron is placed like. Of course, the kidney is made up of, as I said, 1 to 1.5 millions of nephrons. है कि नहीं? तो इतने सारे नेफ्रॉन्स हैं किडनी के अंदर, तो हर एक नेफ्रॉन जो है उसका जो अरेंजमेंट है, उसका जो प्लेसमेंट है, उसका जो लोकेशन है, वो इस कदर है. सो आप देख सकेंगे कि ये जो एरिया है, द कप शेप पार्ट ऑफ द नेफ्रॉन, विच वी कॉल इट एज द बोमन्स कैप्सूल, इट इज लोकेटेड इन द आउटर पार्ट ऑफ द किडनी. राइट. सो आप जब भी एक डॉट ड्रॉ करते हो, यहाँ पर जो मैंने पहले डॉटिंग किया था, हर एक डॉट इंडिकेट करता है या डिपिक्ट करता है कि वो एक बोमन्स कैप्सूल है. And this is the reason why we find that the outer renal cortex, it looks granular, which I said. Okay. Now, why also it is going to be a bit darker red in color? The reason behind it is because it has a network of blood capillaries that is called as a glomerulus. So this is the reason why glomerulus जो रहेगा वो यहाँ पर रहने वाला है इस नेफ्रॉन के अंदर. Right. It's a tuft or it's a network of blood capillaries, right? And this is the real reason why the renal cortex, it appears dark red and granular. Now, coming to the next point, अगर आप नेफ्रॉन को ठीक तरह से देखते हैं, तो remaining part of the nephron, which you can see, this one, what is this? This is a tubular part of the nephron. And this tubular part of the nephron, इसके अलग-अलग नाम है. You might have heard of it. You might recollect this part is the PCT, that is proximal convoluted tubule. This part is the Henle's loop. This part is the DCT. And this part is the collecting tubule. Right? So, ये जो ट्यूब जैसे parts है, all these tubular parts converge together here at this end. And this is the reason why now here I have deliberately used up altogether a different color, that's blue color, for representing the renal medulla. Now what we can see is that the renal medulla consists of many conical parts. You can see this. Many of the pyramid-like structures. It shows many pyramid-like structures, right? And these pyramids are called as the renal pyramids. Okay, so I shall label it here. These are called as the renal pyramids. So renal pyramids जो है, you can see very clearly that the renal pyramids, they show striations, and these striations are nothing but because of this tubular part, the PCT, the Henle's loop, and the DCT of the nephron. Of course, PCT का जो proximal part जो होता है, the proximal part of the tubule, that is PCT, is mainly present in the cortex, renal cortex, whereas Henle's loop is present in the renal medulla. And this gives the medulla a striated appearance, that is a striped appearance. Now coming to the next point, that is these renal pyramids, you can clearly see. Now there is nothing as such mentioned in our textbooks. Okay, but the number of renal pyramids minimum जो होते हैं while we draw, it has to be 8 to 12. Ideally, there are 8 to 18 renal pyramids in each kidney. And these pyramids, you can see, they are clearly found to be separated from each other. They're not connected completely, but there is a small tissue that separates the renal pyramids from each other. You can see this, right? And if you observe, so in between this is nothing but what? I'm drawing it so that you understand it better. तो आपको क्या दिखाई दे रहा है? ये जो एरिया है पिरामिड्स को आपस में सेपरेट करने वाला, this is nothing but that part of the renal cortex which has entered the renal medulla and separated it from each other, right? So these are nothing but the parts of the renal cortex that enters the renal pyramids and separates it from each other, and these are called as the columns of Bertini. So friends, column of Bertini is nothing but that part of the renal cortex that enters into the renal medulla and separates the renal pyramids from each other. Now, nephron जो होता है, you can see on the right hand side that I have drawn a rough diagram of the nephron. Each nephron is going to be involved in the production of urine, of course, after filtration of blood. You might be aware that the production of urine occurs in 3 steps. The first step being ultrafiltration, the second step being selective reabsorption, and the third step being tubular secretion. ये तीनों के तीनों जो steps है, this entire thing is a process of urine formation. Okay. All these processes are going to be undertaken inside the entire nephron, right? अब ये जो urine यहाँ पर बनता है हर एक nephron में, ultimately it's going to be collected here in this portion, right? Now, if you can observe in the diagram, I've shown structures like this for you to understand one thing, that is, many of the collecting tubules of different nephrons ultimately come together and merge together in a common duct. This is a collecting duct, also at times called as the duct of Bellini. Okay, now this duct, which is ultimately going to collect the entire urine, is going to be emptied here. Now look at the renal pyramid. I shall zoom it up for you to understand. So ये सब क्या होंगे? तो ये नेफ्रॉन का लास्ट पार्ट होगा, बराबर. सो यहाँ पर पूरा का पूरा जो हर एक नेफ्रॉन ने बनाया हुआ यूरिन है, that's going to be dispatched, or that's going to be actually collected in this point. And this renal pyramid has a small opening at the tip so that this urine can be discharged here, and this is called as the renal papilla. So I shall label this. This is the renal papilla. Now, the urine that is going to be collected here, okay, it's going to be released here. It's ultimately going to open up, or it's going to be collected in a small space at the tip of the pyramid. And this small space at the tip of the pyramid is called as the minor calyx. I repeat, it's called as the minor calyx. So there are many minor calyces, right? So many minor calyces come together and open into a large area. Now I'm pointing this out. This is going to be the large area in which the minor calyces open up, and this large area ought to be called as the major calyx. So जो यूरिन हर एक नेफ्रॉन में बनेगा, वो अल्टीमेटली कलेक्टिंग ट्यूब्यूल से हो करके कलेक्टिंग डक्ट में आएगा. Collecting ducts will open up at the tip of the renal pyramid. So this will discharge the urine via the renal papilla into a small space that's going to be called as a minor calyx. Minor calyx opens up into a bigger, larger area, you can say, larger than the minor calyx. That's going to be the major calyx. And many major calyces ultimately open into this large space, and this large space is going to be called as the renal pelvis. A funnel-shaped area that's called as the renal pelvis. And this renal pelvis ultimately continues into this tube that's nothing but the ureter, which will help in expulsion of urine from the kidney. So friends, to revise it for the last time, I will just let you know how will you remember it. Point number one, kidneys are covered by protective layers. The outermost layer here, I mean, just immediately outer to the kidney is the renal capsule. We find the blood vessels, that is renal artery supplying pure blood to the kidney, renal vein conducting the impure blood away from the kidney. Then the LS of the kidney shows two different regions, particularly distinct regions. The outer area that's called as the renal cortex, inner to it is the renal medulla. Renal cortex is dark red and granular because of the presence of the Malpighian body along with the glomerulus obviously there. So every dot that we draw depicts the presence of the, what you can say, the Malpighian body, and the red, dark red color is basically because of a rich network of the blood vessels present in each nephron that's called as the glomerulus. Then coming to inner part, that is inner to the renal cortex, is the renal medulla, which consists of many pyramidal structures, right? I'm zooming it out, you can see this. These pyramids are called as the renal pyramids. Okay, the number of which is 8 to 18. And these renal pyramids, they appear slightly lighter in shade as compared to the renal cortex, because वहाँ पर blood vessels थोड़े कम है compared to that of the glomerulus that's present in the Bowman's capsule. So here we find it slightly lighter in color, and also it looks to be striated. Now it appears striated because of the presence of the tubular portion, which ultimately converges at the tip of the renal pyramid, that's called as the renal papilla. From the renal papilla over here, the urine that is produced by each nephron will be discharged into a small space that's called as a minor calyx. Many minor calyces come together to form a major calyx. Many major calyces come together to form a large funnel-shaped area that's called as the renal pelvis, which continues into the ureter, and ureter is ultimately going to drain the urine that's produced by each kidney outside to the urinary bladder. So friends, in this session, this is all about the LS of the kidney. Do let me know if you have any suggestions or any comments, and that was a very good experience with you all. And stay connected to my channel. Please share it with all your friends so that, you know, learning can be made more happier and a fun, right? Thank you so much for being with me. Thank you.